What's the story, everyone? Welcome back to GA Fan TV. I hope the form is good. I hope the form is well. We're into the knockout stages of the All-Ireland Senior Hurling Championship. The All-Ireland quarterfinals taking place this weekend. We're down to 6 teams in the All-Ireland Hurling Championship, which is kind of crazy. I mean, it's gone, by so quickly. To think we only have 5 more games left in the entirety of the All-Ireland Senior Hurling Championship. Obviously, the 2 games happening this weekend, the 2 semi-finals, and of course, the final as well. And this time next month, as a matter of fact, the All-Ireland Senior Hurling Championship will be all and done pretty much. So kind of crazy to think that it's gone by so quickly, but nonetheless, just 2 games to preview and really just looking at one game in detail, which is Galway versus Tipperary. We will touch on Dublin versus Clare as well, but to be honest, even as a Dublin fan, I've very little hope of us pulling off any sort of an upset against Clare. I think it would be one of the biggest championship upsets in God knows how long if we manage to get something from that game and pull off the shock. But I just don't see it happening, especially with the game being at the Gaelic grounds as well. But Galway versus Tipperary is a very fascinating game for more than one reason. Liam Cahill going up against Henry Shefflin. Tipperary and Galway, 2 very, very good sides. And Tipperary obviously coming in with a huge amount of momentum following that win versus Offaly. But can you really read too much into that? I'm not entirely sure. It was the highest scoring game in the history of the All-Ireland Hurling Championship. Tipperary just 1 score away from finishing with a total of 60. And it probably does go to show that having the Joe McDonagh Cup teams in the All-Ireland series maybe shouldn't happen. I think one of them playing a Leinster side I agree with because the gap isn't that big, but I think one of them playing one of the Munster teams is, it's probably not the right thing to do. But yeah, we're here to preview the games, we're here to break down the games, so let me know in the comments down below what you think about some of these games this weekend. And as I said, we'll start with Galway versus Tipperary. Massive game. The winner of this obviously goes into the semi-final and will play Limerick. It's been an interesting season for both of these 2 counties. Both have had very good moments and both have had very disappointing moments. Tipperary were on the brink of a Munster final, had they have obviously gotten past Waterford on the final day of the Munster round robin, and had they have been in the Munster final, they wouldn't have been playing Limerick. So who knows, they might have ended up with silverware, and Tipperary could have very well been sitting on the couch this weekend waiting for these games to play out. But instead, here they are, Tipperary, and for Tipperary, it has been an up and down season. They've had injuries, Jason Ford, Garrod O'Connor, Brian McGrath as well. Some of those players are slowly regaining fitness. Obviously, Jason Ford was back the last day versus Offaly. But certainly for Tipperary, they are missing some key players, and maybe that did play a big part in that defeat to Waterford on the final day of the Munster round robin. But I think, to be honest with you, this game is just going to be an all-out shootout. It's going to be end-to-end. It's going to be one of those mental games of hurling that we've seen a lot of the time this year. Like, it could very well end up with a scoreline of like 2-25 to like 3-20 or something like that. Like, it's going to be absolute back and forth, neck and neck. And for me, like, this game is going to be decided on 2 things. One, I think accuracy is just going to be so huge. Like, you think about it, that's generally how a lot of these games are obviously decided. But both teams are going to get a huge amount of chances. Both teams are going to get a huge amount of opportunities with the way that both of these 2 sides set up. So it's just going to be who's more clinical. Who has that edge, who has that knack, in front of the sticks. And I think as well, discipline is going to be key. Who's going to give away the most frees, because as you look at it, both sides have very good free takers. Galway obviously in Evan Nyland, and Tipperary in Jason Ford or Jake Morris if he's on them. So Tipperary have a lot of very good options from frees, and as do Galway as well, in fairness. So I think those 2 key elements of the game are going to be absolutely crucial. I do look at Tipperary and think that they probably do pose more of an attacking threat than Galway, especially with Jason Ford back in the side. Like, in just 3 games this year, Jason Ford has scored 4 goals and 21 points. He's actually the 8th top scorer in the entirety of the championship, despite only having played 3 games, which is absolutely extraordinary stuff there from a Tipperary perspective. Missing Garrod O'Connor will be a big loss if he doesn't play this weekend. He scored 1 goal and 19 points in 4 matches. But look, obviously Shamie Callanan's back in the side now, became the first hurler to actually go. Will you shut up? I'm trying to record a video here. There's a bird bleeding barking in the background. Fucking hell. But as I was saying, Shamie Callan obviously became the first hurler in the history of the All-Ireland Senior Hurling Championship to score 40 goals. Having him back is absolutely crucial as well. Whether he starts, I'm not entirely sure. Like, he probably is getting on a bit, and he's been in and out of the side in the last couple of seasons with injuries. But having him back, I think, will be absolutely crucial from a Tipperary perspective. And obviously, Jake Morris has been absolutely fantastic this season as well. He's been in sensational form. You've got John McGrath, Noel McGrath, you've got Mark Keogh, like a lot of very attacking options, and I just feel like Tipperary have more ways to hurt Galway than Galway can hurt Tipperary. Like, the problem I've had with Galway in the last couple of years is that they lack a lot of very good threats in their attack. Like, I think Conor Whelan was very good the last day, but he hasn't always been consistent, and he's had some very good days, but he can also not turn up on the odd occasion. But the last day he was sensational versus Kilkenny, in fairness. Evan Nyland is very good, but he probably does a lot of his damage from frees and place balls. 60 points in 6 games, so he's averaged about 10 points per game, which is very impressive in fairness. But again, a lot of them have been from place balls. And Conor Whelan, to be fair, has scored 6 goals and 11 points in 6 matches. So he can do a lot of damage. And for Tipperary, they'll have to be very wary of Conor Whelan. And to be fair, he had a phenomenal game against Kilkenny, and it still wasn't enough to get the victory, which is why I feel that for Tipperary, it's going to be more about what they do at the other end. Like, it's going to be very hard to stop lads like Conor Whelan or Brian Concannon. Like, it's going to be very hard to stop these lads on their day, but like, to be fair to Tipperary, they just really need to focus on what they do at the other end. As long as they do, I think they will be too strong and have enough to win it. Like, as I said, you've got players like Jason Flynn, Brian Concannon, Kevin Cooney, Cathal Mannion, but like, a lot of these players, they chip in with the odd score here and there, but they're not as free scoring as some of the Tipperary forwards in Jason Ford, Jake Morris, Mark Keogh, who, you know, will often rack up scores of 1-4, 1-5. And I just think Tipperary will be far more ruthless in front of goal than Galway. And I think as well, Tipperary have had like a lot of very tough games to play this season in the Munster Championship. They've been playing at a much higher level than Galway, with all due respect. Like, the toughest game Galway have had all season in the Munster Championship has been Kilkenny, you know, whereas Tipperary have had to play Limerick, Cork, Waterford, Clare, like a lot of very tough, intense games, and I think that will stand to Tipperary, which is why I think Tipperary will just have a bit too much. I think this will go down to the wire. Like, there won't be a whole much in it, but I think in the final 5 to 10 minutes, Tipperary will pull away, and I fancy them to win it by 3 points. Dublin versus Clare then, as I was saying, obviously this game happening at the Gaelic grounds, as is the Tipperary-Galway game as well, which I think favours Tipperary as well, in fairness. Yeah, look, I mean, from a Dublin perspective, to play this game in the Gaelic grounds is not ideal whatsoever. It's obviously much closer to Clare. It's much more of a home game, really, for Clare. Like, they're going to bring way more supporters, with the fact that Clare obviously isn't too far from Limerick, so yeah, look, I mean, to be fair, as us Dublin fans, we've enough privileges. Like, I don't think we really, our complaints are really warranted here because of the fact that, the Dublin footballers play almost every game in Croke Park. So, for once, we're on the receiving end of something being a little bit unfair regarding ground. But to be fair, the Gaelic grounds probably does make the most sense. It's close for Galway, close for Tipperary, close for Limerick, and be a great atmosphere and everything else. And imagine the stadium is going to be fully packed, and it's going to be two very, very fascinating, or two very, very good atmospheres for both games, in fairness. Hopefully there's a good number of Dublin fans who make the trip down and get behind the lads. But as I was saying there, like, I just don't see how we can stop Clare. Like, I just don't. I was talking there about Galway, Galway not playing at the level that Tipperary have been playing at, and the same applies here times 2. Do you know what I mean? Like, because Clare are better than Tipperary, and Galway are better than Dublin. So, like, Clare have the potential here to wipe the floor with Dublin, if I'm being honest. It's a weird one. Like, Dublin do tend to raise their games against better teams. We drew at Galway earlier in the year. I don't think Galway were fully at it that day. I think they were mostly looking ahead towards a Leinster final, and we were competitive enough against Kilkenny. We only lost by 6 points, which is why I think Dublin will turn up here and will put up a good fight against Clare. Keane O'Sullivan's been in brilliant form. Donald Burke, as we very well know, when he gets time and space in front of the goal, he can do damage. Danny Sutcliffe has been in good form as well this year, still knocking around to my surprise, which is good to see. So we do have some ways to hurt Clare, and we will raise our game. We will, stand toe-to-toe with Clare and make a bit of a game out of it. Like, from a Clare perspective, like, I remember when they played Wexford this time last year, there was a bit of a flatness about Clare, and if you remember, they had a massive hangover from that Munster final, which really carried into the All-Ireland semi-final as well, when they got absolutely blown to pieces by Kilkenny. So I think for Clare, like, they'll be well aware of that, and they'll need to stand up in this game, because the last thing from a Clare perspective is for this game to be close or go down to the wire, or for them to be on the back seat, because they'll be massive favourites, and they'll be expected to comfortably put Dublin to bed. Like, you look at Clare's attackers in Tony Kelly, Aidan McCarthy, Mark Rogers, Ian Galvin, Ryan Taylor. They have a huge amount of ways to hurt Dublin, and I just don't see how our defence is going to be able to withstand this Dublin attack. Like, will Owen O'Donnell be the man to pick up Tony Kelly? To be fair, Tony Kelly tends to roam mostly around the half-forward line in midfield, so that would hugely drag Owen O'Donnell out of position, so probably won't see that matchup. But it's just going to be so tough for Dublin, and we're going to need to be, our accuracy is going to need to be over 90%. We're going to need to be so clinical, and we're going to have to hope that Clare just produce one of those off performances, which, to be fair, have certainly happened in the last couple of years. I remember 2 or 3 years ago where Laois nearly beat Clare in this game a couple of seasons ago. So it's not inconceivable. It's not inconceivable that Dublin don't beat Clare, but it's very unlikely. Very unlikely. And as I said, it would be a massive shock if Dublin managed to produce anything against Clare this weekend. Like, even if this game's in Croke Park, it probably suits Clare as well. Like, I feel like if we got this game in Portlaoise or Tullamore or something like that, maybe we might have been able to do something. But as I said, it does make sense to play the game in the Gaelic grounds from a logistics point of view, with Clare, Galway and Tipperary all their supporters needing to travel to Limerick. And I just think, Clare will have way too much firepower from start to finish, and I can see them winning by 8 or 9 points. I think the final, like, if Dublin are in a game going into the final 15-10 minutes, that's absolutely huge. But as we've often seen with Dublin, like, Dublin, a lot of the time against some of the other big teams, they start quite strong, they're very competitive for the first half, but it's in those final 15 to 20 minutes where other teams pull away. And even against Galway, Dublin led by, I think, 8 or 9 points early on in the second half, but Galway pulled it back late on. Kilkenny done something similar against us as well. Like, that's the problem with Dublin, is that we don't have the same firepower to bring off the bench that a team like Clare have, and we just don't really seem to have the willingness to go the full 70. So I think Clare will have too much firepower, unfortunately. I hope I'm wrong, but I'm going to go Clare by 8 points. That might be a bit kind, because this could well be by more, but I'm going to say Clare by 8 points. I hope I'm wrong. I hope Dublin pull it off, but I just don't see it happening. In terms of player of the week and bet of the weekend, I mean, is there a bet of the weekend? Maybe Dublin pulling something off against Clare. To be fair, I mean, Westmeath beat Wexford in the championship this year, which we never saw coming. So you just never know. You never know in Gaelic football, in hurling, in sport at the best of times, what can happen. But I just don't see it happening, to be honest with you. And player of the week, I'm going to go for Jake Morris of Tipperary. I think if Tipperary are to get the job done versus Galway, he's going to have to be on form, on side, and really produce his best performance of the season. And I think that he will, in fairness. So, yeah, that's what I'm going to go with. Player of the week, I'm going to go for Jake Morris. And bet of the week, Dublin to beat Clare. Is it a bet of the week? I don't know. Maybe Galway beating Tipperary. I don't really know, to be honest with you. But yeah, let me know your thoughts, your opinions in the comments down below. Let me know your predictions for both of these two games. Hopefully, from a Dublin perspective, we can pull it off. But I don't see it happening. And I think Clare and Tipperary will be the two sides to progress into the All-Ireland semi-finals. It'll be a repeat of Clare-Kilkenny, mouth-watering game that, and Limerick versus Tipperary. Two monster games, in my opinion. But yeah, let me know your thoughts, your opinions in the comments down below. My name is Aaron. Speak to you all soon.